I've spent 15 years building furniture, and I'm here to tell you that you're probably building things way stronger than they actually need to be. Now, we've all seen those Pinterest projects that look amazing from a distance, and then once you get up closer, there's been some obvious shortcuts, and it's clear that we don't want to be that. But here's the problem. Sometimes we're overcorrecting and we're just building things way beyond what's actually necessary. Because honestly, not every project needs to be heirloom quality or last for 150 years. So in this video, I'm going to break down how to build smarter, not just stronger, so that you can save time, money, and effort without sacrificing quality. And by the end, you'll have a better idea of when to go all in and when to scale back. So let's take a walk down memory lane and unpack what I'm talking about. You see, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there were several economic downturns, including the Long Depression and the Great Depression. Because of this, things were built to last, quite frankly, because they had to be. Back then, times were hard and people were broke, and not just like, I may not be able to afford Starbucks broke, but actually we might not eat broke. Truth is, in those days, you weren't gonna get bored and decide to change out your dining room table in 5 years because honestly, you were just trying to survive. In fact, before the rise of consumer culture that we know today, people viewed their belongings as investments. If a table leg broke, it was repaired, it wasn't thrown out. But in the mid-1900s, a shift happened. We traded durability for disposability. This is brought on by mass production and planned obsolescence. Companies realized that they could actually sell more if their products had shorter lifespans, and this led to the cheap replaceable furniture that we know of today. Now, I'm not about to get on a soapbox like some grumpy old man longing for the days of yore. I love the comforts of modern day life. I love power tools. I love binging shows on Netflix and being able to take my wife out for regular date nights. I know I'm blessed to live in this era, and I love it. My point is that your projects don't have to last a lifetime anymore. So it's okay if you use pocket screws instead of mortise and tenon. It's even okay if you use pine instead of some kind of fancy hardwood, because honestly, the truth is you're probably going to swap it out for something different far sooner than it's ever going to wear out. Which brings me to my next point, and it's that trends change and fast. Did you know that trends change about every 3 to 5 years? Now, fellas, I know that we don't really care about changing trends. Lord knows that when I met my wife, I was using milk crates for an entertainment center. To me, they were the perfect modular system, right? You could stack them up kind of in this pyramid if you wanted to. You could make different things, whatever kind of shape you wanted. Put your TV on top, and then down below, you could turn them on their side, and you could put your DVD player in there, put your DVDs in there, all that good stuff. To me, they were just kind of perfect. And honestly, if I wasn't married, I might still be using them today. But here's the deal. While high gloss red oak cabinets may be your most favorite thing in the whole wide world, regardless of whatever trend is in style, the truth is your wife probably does care about trends. And honestly, what are you going to do one of these days if she comes up and says that she wants you to sand down those beloved red oak cabinets and then she wants you to paint them? I've just instilled a fear in you guys that you didn't even know existed. You see, what was farmhouse yesterday is mid-century modern today, and it'll be something entirely different tomorrow. So honestly, a coffee table meant to survive a nuclear blast doesn't really matter if you sell it in 5 years. Now, I'm not suggesting that you jump on every single trend that comes along. I'm a firm believer that you make your home your own. But I think that you'll be surprised how fast that you'll part with things, even if it's something that you really love. One time we moved houses, and when we did, the owner wanted us to go ahead and throw in the headboards that I'd built as a part of the sale. Guess what? I dropped those headboards like a sack of potatoes. Now, I know what some of you guys are saying. You're saying, Jeremy, I don't just build for myself, I build for other people. They might keep it forever. Well, they might. They probably won't, but even if they do, I think you'll be surprised with how much stronger things are than we actually give them credit for. And honestly, I think sometimes we're just building based on what we think we're supposed to do, rather than what's needed for our application. So, how do we build smarter without sacrificing quality? I remember the first time that I realized that I didn't have to add glue to cabinet boxes. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a firm believer in glue on everything when it comes to things, because the strength that glue adds is really incredible. But I was building cabinets with pre-finished plywood, and honestly, it wasn't going to stick to anything. I don't know what it was doing. It was pretty much doing nothing. And so one day I just realized it, and I was like, hey, I think I'm just gonna quit adding glue. It's really kind of serving no purpose. And so I did, I quit, and you know what it did? Nothing changed. The pocket screws still have a lot of holding power, Then you add in the fact that you've got the back of the cabinet. Once you put that on, that's going to sturdy things up. You add the face frame, that's going to sturdy things up. Not to mention, when you add your face frame, you can go ahead and use glue on that because you're dealing with unfinished wood. Here's another example. So I've been building this new miter saw station, and originally it was shorter. It was just kind of one that I'd throw together up here, and then eventually I ended up building these cabinets, but the cabinets didn't match the bottom, and so now I decided, okay, I don't want the bottom to match the top. So get all this done, and I'm, kind of looking into these upper cabinets a little bit more, and I realized just, again, this was about 10 years ago or so, and I realized one of the things that I did was I just used some of the cheapest plywood you can buy at Lowe's. At the time, it was all the money I had, and so I just did it. The center panel is just the cheapest 1/4 inch piece of plywood that I could find that I stuck in there, where now a lot of times I will typically use for sure a 1/4 inch piece of MDF. It paints better. I like working with it better for a center panel. A lot of times I'll put a 1/2 inch in there and then I'll rabbet it out to a 1/4 so that I've got a heavier door. That's typically the best way that I like to do it. It's just a lot more work. But that, along with the fact that now when I build stuff, I'm using more cabinet grade stuff, and my methods have gotten better. And some of that I think is maybe just for me, because 10 years later, these are still hanging here just fine. Nothing's coming apart. It works just fine. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes you need strength. And when I built this wall of built-ins here, I knew that Jess was gonna load this down with all of these books and knickknacks that you see here. So I actually opted to laminate 2 pieces of 3/4 inch together and then just put a piece of edge banding here on the front. Plus, we actually like the chunkier look a little bit better as well. But when I built these closet built-ins, I knew that I wanted the look of chunky shelves without the added weight. So these are just holding shoes. So really all I ended up doing was just take and put a 1x2 on the front edge of this, and this is still just a 3/4 inch shelf. And the benefit is that I can actually still bring these out, and even though these are removable shelves, they kind of look like they're still a part of the face frame. Every project is different, and not every project needs to require a forklift to move it. Some need to be built like a tank, and some actually don't. One of the things you can do is you can ask yourself this question: is this actually going to be used in 20 years? And honestly, what's it going to be used for? Because, if all you're going to do is put some succulents and some Funko Pops on a shelf, probably kind of doesn't really matter what it's made out of. Some projects, they're going to be here for 50 years. Some will probably be on Facebook Marketplace in 5. If you can't afford white oak or maple or walnut, well, try some knotty alder or poplar, or heck, even pine. If you don't know how to do mortise and tenon joinery, well, try dowels, pocket holes, or even plain old screws. This is exactly why there's no one way to build. What works for one might seem like a cheap hack to another, but all those online critics can just go kick rocks. I remember starting out wishing that there was someone that I could kick ideas around with and be like, hey, is this overbuilt, or am I even building it right? Well, I actually do virtual one-on-one coaching now for that very reason. Whether you need help simplifying a project, choosing materials, or just making sure you're on the right track, I'm here to help. There's a link in the description if you ever want to chat. You're going to have plenty of opportunities to build a lot fancier stuff as time goes by. The most important thing is that you get out in the shop and you just start.